Welcome to Unit 5, Conflict Management. As you can probably tell now, we've done 1, 2, 3 and 4. This is obviously number 5, so don't worry, just 2 more to go. So what we're going to learn today, the first one we're going to learn is know how to communicate with people in conflict situations and know how to follow procedures to resolve conflict. That's what we're going to go through today. This will all relate to the portfolio. So, first question is, what is conflict? Have a little think about what is conflict. Where do you find conflict? Well, conflict in this unit itself is geared around everyday life rather than just in events. We'll make it event orientated, but with conflict you get it all the time on the bus, on the train, in shops. So conflict is there all about. So whatever you learn here, you can use moving forward. You can use it outside of this. Obviously, we're going to make it towards more the event side of it. So, what is conflict? Well, conflict can quite simply be defined as a disagreement for which the parties involved perceive a threat to their needs, interests, or concerns, or an active disagreement between people with opposing opinions or principles. So, what does that mean then? Let's bring it back to the event world. So, if someone believes that they should be allowed into that particular turnstile, into that particular area, but they do not have a ticket or the correct accreditation, what they're going to say, I should be allowed in there. They believe or they perceive they should be allowed in there because they've paid X amount of money for a ticket. However, they do not have the correct ticket. That's where you're going to get the conflict. Or someone wants to stand on the concourse or stand in the aisle because they can't see or they can't, or that's just what they want to do. Obviously, they're not allowed because of the regulations, which we've covered. That's where you're going to find conflict, okay? So the main areas you're going to find conflict, you're going to be queuing. People don't like queuing. I personally do not like queuing. I'm a very impatient person. Waiting times. How many times have you ever been into a queue or been on a train or been on a bus and there's been a delay and no one's told you why? Starts with obviously the frustration. Being searched. People don't like being searched. Why do they not like being searched? Because people see it as a violation of their human rights. It's not against the violation of their human rights. Anyone that's done this, you'll know that people say, that's my human rights, I cannot be searched. People don't like being spoken to, saying they're going to be searched. They like being touched. They think, well, why should I get searched? I don't have anything on me. Okay, fantastic. But reality is that they're not going to like it. Banned illegal items. They believe they're bringing in a flag with certain writing or a certain size. They want to bring it in because they want to support their club or support what they're doing. But it doesn't fit regulations. Conflict there. Bag policy. A lot of bag policies, a lot of stadiums now, especially in London, are bringing in an A4 bag policy. What that means is that the bags can not be bigger than A4. Determine A4 is a bit of paper. You have a lady's handbag, it's going to be bigger than A4. I see it all the time. Other venues policies, this is the biggest one. Well, I can do it at that place. Why can't I do it here? I can do it there. You're always going to get that. Refusing entry. People that are influenced of drugs and alcohol. Warnings. Complaints about service. So prices, stopping sale of alcohol. And obviously ejecting someone. This is where you're going to find the conflict. Any of you that have SIA badges and have worked in the nighttime economy, you get this all the time. Users that worked in retail, you get it all the time. Someone's bought something, it doesn't fit them, you bring them back and you can't give their money back. That's conflict. So, we'll talk about this. So what can you do as a steward in order to reduce the potential of conflict? Well, it's developing self and situation awareness. A lot of this we will cover in the scenarios. You will be put into situations that will be conflict orientated, and the idea is you learn the theory through these videos and the portfolio of obviously how to develop and self-situation awareness. We will go through this. And understanding your own reactions to stress, frustration and anger. This to me is the biggest one. Everybody has a reaction to something. Unless you've been in that situation, you do not know how you're going to react. There's not many people that can say they've been in a hostile, really conflict situation. Everyone believes they would do something in that situation, but until you've actually been in it, then obviously it's very difficult for you to work out or to figure out how you're going to be. This is the purpose of the practical. This is the purpose of when we meet. This is the purpose of the scenarios. This is all about learning the theory behind it. When we give you the scenarios, we'll be putting you in these positions. So you can actually say, I know I've done that. I'll give you an example. I did a training course Monday to Friday. for spectator safety. I knew that the fans in the away stand at a London club where the guys were going to be working, I already knew what there was going to be like because obviously I went to the meeting. The scenarios that I did were actually around what those particular fans were going to do. And a lot of them had never been in these situations before. After the game, every single one of them come up to me and said to me, "Thanks, Mike, for that," because obviously what we learned in the scenarios allowed me to prepare for what it was. So this is things like people smoking in the stands, people standing in the aisles, people not listening, people not moving. I did scenarios around that and they found it. And that's the whole purpose of the scenarios, is to make you aware of possibly what sort of things you can come across. When you're listening to this and we do the scenarios, I will actually be looking for individuals that have been in situations to actually be able to come in and say, well, actually, this I dealt with it this way, I dealt with it that way. That's what we want. It's everyone's input. So, what actually causes conflict then? What is conflict? How's it caused? Well, if we're looking at the very, very basic of an individual, this includes yourself and everybody else. This is what turns people into aggression. Embarrassment. No one likes getting embarrassed. Example of embarrassed is being spoken to in a certain way, or being picked out, or bullying, or something along them sort of lines. But people being embarrassed, being humiliated. You know, someone's queued up at the turnstile. They've queued up for 10, 15 minutes in front of all their friends, and they realise that they haven't forgot their ticket, or the ticket doesn't work. That is humiliation. Being insulted. It's very easy. Sometimes it can be very easy for people to do. They pick on something. What any of you that worked in the security industry, what will happen is, or even the stewards as well potentially, they will find something about you and they will latch onto it. It could be the size of a part of your body. It could be the way you speak. It could be anything. It could be absolutely anything. And that's what they do, insulting. People are afraid. You ever heard that saying that if you back an animal into a corner, they're going to get aggressive? This is fact. Once someone's backed into a corner about anything, they will potentially get aggressive. But that comes from afraid. That saying, the best form of defence is offence. That's where that comes from. And being rejected. No one likes to be rejected in any walk of life. That could be rejected in a personal aspect or rejected in a business point of view, perspective. Everyone gets rejected. That's again what causes conflict. So again, in order for you to deal with conflict, you should understand that this is what causes them. So make sure you're not the person who embarrasses someone, humiliates, insults, or actually you're going to reject people, but you do it in such a way, which is what we're going to learn. But understand that actually, you know what, someone who's getting aggressive to you, they're not being aggressive to you as such, they're getting aggressive because of the situation and the environment. They haven't been allowed to sit down where they want to. They're not allowed to stand. Think of it that way. Just think to yourself that this person is not getting personal to me. Remain positive. So, another thing that causes it is attitude, okay? People will come in with a bad attitude. Now, looking at it from a stadium perspective, back to stewards, that's because their team are potentially losing. That's the biggest cause of an attitude, where people come there, they expect their team to win. They potentially have travelled hundreds of miles to come and watch their team play. And the team is not not winning. So obviously that's where the attitude comes in. So think of it this way, and again we will practice this in a practical way during the scenarios. But think about my attitude. So my attitude will affect my behaviour. So what I think will be different between how I act. So if I'm thinking positive, I act positively. If I think negatively, my attitude is very, very bad towards the steward. It's bad towards the club. It's towards the players, whatever it may be. But I will behave in a certain way that would be aggressive, which will then affect your attitude, which will then affect your behaviour. So it's almost a cycle. So my attitude will affect my behaviour, which in turn will affect your attitude, which will then will affect your behaviour. That becomes a negative cycle. It does work positively. So if I've got a positive attitude and I'm all friendly and very nicely, how's that going to act towards you? That you're going to be exactly the same. You're going to behave in the same, and everyone's going to be fantastic. But think of this in a negative way. I have a really bad attitude. I'll come in and my team's losing, for example, and let's say I came in and I kick something because I'm not happy. What are you going to think as a steward? there you go, he's criminal damage, or he's got a really bad attitude, which then means you're then going to approach me with that same attitude that I've got. But because I'm already in that attitude and the way that you're going to speak to me, if it's a negative attitude cycle, then I'll say, don't do this, or what you're going to do about it, and then spirals out of control. And before you know it, you're getting into a potentially aggressive situation. Again, we will put this. We will highlight this into the scenarios, but again, this is just the theory. Okay, so there you go. How do you recognise anger and aggression? So in this situation, you're in this negative cycle of the attitude cycle, otherwise known as Batari's box. But how do you recognise it? Well, there are certain key things that you can recognise. The biggest one is someone's closing in, invading your space. Have you ever stood there and had a bit of a conflict with someone, and that person's then come close to you to almost try and intimidate you? That's obviously a purpose of recognising anger and aggression. Standing square on. That's the biggest one. I mean, we'll show this in the practical in scenarios, that when you're actually standing square on, it does actually look aggressive. Excessive eye contact, otherwise known as staring. If anyone's ever been involved in that sort of side where you've told someone no, and they will literally just stand there from wherever they are and stare at you. It's to intimidate you. Pointing or a clenched fist. This is the biggest one you see. Your brain does this just literally subconsciously. Someone's talking something, someone's getting angry, and you see them, as they're talking, their fist will start clenching. They don't necessarily want to throw a punch, but that's a sign of aggression. Head and chin are pushed forward. They push their head forward. That goes in line with obviously someone closing in. Raise voices. That's the first thing you do. You shout. They do it from an intimidation perspective. Look at that picture of two lions. They do that. What's the first thing that they do when they get angry? A dog, it barks. A lion will roar. That's the raised voices. Swearing and abusive language. Their language will become completely different. They will start swearing at you. They'll start being abusive towards you, finding something about you. And the last but not least is abuse directed towards an individual. That person's that, or you're this, or you're that. Like I said before, that's the attitude side of it. So that's recognising the aggression. That's recognising the anger. So why is that important? Because if you're talking to someone, or you see somebody and someone's doing this, someone's staring at someone, it's about being proactive. You can recognise that that person has an issue. You can recognise that person is potentially going to start being aggressive. That is where you will fit in. That's where you've recognised it, and you can actually turn around and say, I believe that person is going to get aggressive. So what can you do? You can intervene, but obviously we'll talk about it a little bit later, but it's all about recognising that aspect of it. So, if someone does start getting aggressive towards you, and they do start getting angry towards somebody else, you have something known as reasonable force. Now, most of you have probably heard this phrase before. Reasonable force, in its entirety or in its basic form, is in fact is force that can be used in a legal sense in order to protect yourself or anybody else. Okay, so a person may use such force as is reasonable in the circumstances for the purpose of self-defence, so obviously to look after yourself. Defence of another, so you believe someone else is getting attacked, you can obviously defend that person by using reasonable force. Defence of a property, you believe someone's going to start smashing windows or anything like that. For example, in a stadium, people can start ripping seats and throwing it somewhere. Prevention of a crime. Now, anything would be classed as fine as known as an indictable offence. So a crime would be assault. Crime would be criminal damage, murder, anything of them sort of lines. You can use reasonable force to prevent it, and obviously using lawful arrest. Now, this is what comes down to citizen's arrest. It's not something that I advocate to do because it does put you into a bit of a position. However, you can use reasonable force to detain someone. For you that have done a door supervisor's course, this will all come apparent in physical intervention. For you that not, obviously again we will show you on the techniques and that type of stuff on the course. So we'll show you how you detain someone. We won't show you what you do because obviously you only do that as an SIA steward, but it'll just be using that for a practical element side of it. So there are two questions that prosecutors would ask about reasonable force. Was the use of force necessary in the circumstances? So let me give you an example. You're standing there and that person is shouting at you, getting aggressive towards you. However, they've not laid their finger on you. Is it acceptable for you to put their hands on them? Well, simple answer is no, because the force has to match up to the level of threat. I'm not saying shout back, but as soon as that person puts their hands on you, then yes, you could use reasonable force in terms of touching that person, depends on the circumstances, to actually defend yourself. But if someone's there screaming, shouting at you, there's no need to actually hit someone or place your hands on them. There are exceptions to this. However, we will go through this in more detail during the practical scenario. Okay, so please don't think that if you're standing there and someone's screaming and shouting at you, you can't do anything about it. However, in this theory side of it, in this presentation, in this going through the PowerPoints, this is the theory side. So please don't think that. We will show you during the scenario-based training. And was there a need for use any force at all? That's the biggest one. You get that gut feeling, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And that means that you shouldn't have done it. And this is what a jury will look out for. This is what the police will look out for. They'll actually say, well, hold on a minute. Should he have used force? And that's the biggest telltale sign. Any of you who've ever been sitting in a court or been involved in any way, jury service or maybe something else, what the jury will look at and think to themselves, right, would I have done the same at that particular point in time? If the answer is no, then chances are it is not classed as reasonable force and there's no need to use force at all. Again, we will show you techniques during the scenario-based training. This is just more along the lines of the theory. Okay, so what can you do to reduce conflict? Now, we've already covered this, and we've talked about it a little bit more in depth. So developing self and situational awareness, being wary of what's around you, being wary when someone could end up kicking off or getting violent or getting aggressive, and jumping in and make sure it's done now. Understanding your own reactions to stress, frustration and anger. Again, we talked about that. That's all regarding the scenario-based training. We'll put you in them situations. Maintaining self-control. Again, we'll use that in the scenarios, but being able to not scream and shout because you are working, you are representing a club or a company, whatever it may be. But above all, is being able to use effective communication. And this, to me, is the key to avoiding conflict, is to assess that risk. Okay, so we're going to talk about the risk, we'll talk about communication now. Again, this is just following in the portfolio. So where we're looking on the Unit 5 as it goes down, this is where I'm obviously looking at where it talks about the risk and talk about POP and everything else, okay? So communication. So how do we reduce frustration? Well, how does someone get to anger and aggression? Well, it starts with frustration. What is a sign of frustration? That could be someone tutting, rolling their eyes. It's more body language. It's more about what they are seen to be doing rather than actually getting violent. So a simple example of frustration is something along those sort of lines. You're talking to someone or someone's in a queue and they're getting frustrated, I don't know, they're potentially kicking the floor or pacing up and down. That is frustration. That is where we need to stop that person. That's where we need to intervene at that particular time, because if it continues to go, that's when that person gets aggressive. Some people go 0 to 60 and aggressive very, very quickly. That's something that we can talk about obviously during the scenarios, but most people will get frustrated. Okay, so how do we reduce this frustration? Well, the answer is by being proactive. So if there's a long queue, for example, there's a long queue that's at the toilets on the concourse. What do? Well, you tell them to go somewhere else because they're going to wait in that queue. That queue could be there 15 minutes long. They're joining that queue expecting it to move forward. Now, if you've seen that queue and nothing has moved for 10 minutes, why? Why would you allow other people to join that queue? Okay, obviously, don't get me wrong, if there's a queue and that's the only one available or that's for that particular turnstile, obviously you can't send someone around because that's for their ticket. But what can you do? You could tell them. You could tell them that there is a delay in entering the venue. Really apologies for the delay, we're very busy today. Something along those sort of lines. We'll be looking at that during the scenarios and the practical side of it. Advising search conditions in advance. This to me is not done enough. Part of legislation and part of a requirement to get into a stadium is to be searched. The issue that you have, and I see this all the time, is that the individuals that are outside, there's no communication to people. So when it comes to them about getting searched, they don't go, oh no, I'm not going to get searched. They understand it. But what could you tell them? You could say to them, get stuff out your pockets, get ready for a search. As you go through, get stuff out your pockets, get ready, open your jackets, whatever the search policy is. Respond to customer complaints seriously. Any of you that have made a complaint, a lot of it is just venting. Do you want anything to come out of it? I don't know. Maybe you just want to just put your opinion across and someone to take that seriously. However, I don't know if any of you've ever come across it where someone's actually, you've made a complaint to someone and they don't take it seriously. That actually will cause more frustration and more anger. So take it seriously. Someone says to them, oh, that person over there is smoking, or that person, or these chips are cold that come out of the concessions in the stand. Okay, listen, I can only apologise for that. However, I will go speak to the chef and I'll find out what's going on. Thanks for letting me know. They're just examples of how to take it seriously. The question I would ask in a complaint is, what would you like me to do about it? Not in a flippant way, not in a bad way, but okay, thanks for letting me know. Is there anything I can do to make this better? 9 times out of 10, they'll say, no, I just wanted to tell you so it doesn't happen to somebody else. Fantastic, that's the best answer. Manage customer expectations. Everyone goes to a game. Everyone that works in the stadium is probably aware of a late walk-up. So what is a late walk-up? Well, it means that the kick-off is at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. It gets to around about quarter to 3, 10 to 3, and you've got the majority of the fans at the turnstile waiting to come in. What's their expectation? Well, their expectation is to be in their seat at 1500 hours or even 14:59 ready for kick-off. Is that realistically going to happen? No. So what can we do to manage their expectations? Tell them there's a wait. Say to them, at the end of the day, make sure you try and get into the stadium early. Something along those sort of lines. Explain venue policies and decisions. You're searching someone and someone's not allowed to bring in cigarettes, or someone's not allowed to bring in a bottle of water. Don't just take it off them and say, right, you can't bring that in. Tell them why. Point to the prohibited items list. Everyone should have a prohibited items list. There you go, no bottles of water. They understand this because this happens at airports. It's exactly the same thing. Signage is good. Active listening. Actually listening to what their complaint is. Someone tells something, put all their attention on them. And most importantly, use effective communication. These individuals will be coming to you because you're wearing a high-vis jacket. Because you're wearing a high-vis jacket, they expect an answer from you. They expect you to be able to give them the answer, okay? You probably know the answer, and hopefully after this course, you'll have more information. But it's how you put it across. That's the biggest one. So we covered this anyway. What about communications? You've got visual, content, and obviously vocal. Visual, for me, is around about, it's otherwise known as body language, and what people see. It's about 55% of communication. So what we're talking about visual. Well, we understand now that you can see if someone comes to you, if they're aggressive. Excuse me. Their face is aggressive. They've got that staring in the eyes, clenched fist. You can now see that person's getting aggressive. However, the same applies to you. Think about how you stand. Think about how you look to people. Think about how you would come across from a visual perspective. Now, for me, any of you that are parents, which I am, for me, I would say to my children, if there's any issues, go to someone in a high-vis jacket. If you get lost, go and speak to them. However, for me, it's important that you dress smartly, you look clean, you look tidy, because people look at that. If people look at the way that you're dressed or the way that you are, people make an impression about you. If you look smart, more people will come towards you and expect an answer. Think about the content that you're going to say. Now, content is important because power is knowledge and knowledge is power. So the idea behind this course is to give you that information, give you that content. So what's the reason why someone can't smoke in a stadium? Well, it's simple. Yes, it's against the rules because everyone knows they can't do it. However, the biggest one, Bradford, 1975. That will put majority of people off. They think, oh my God, I don't want to cause a fire. Anything on those sort of lines. Okay, so that's the content. So this is what this is all about. But the vocal, it's the way you say it. I'm very wary. For me, that I can be very direct. That comes from obviously my military background. However, there are individuals out there that are very, what's the word I'm looking for? They're very passive. So if someone's trying to tell you something, or you're trying to tell someone something, and you're not coming across, you've got all the right information, but you're not coming across in a assertive way or in a way that they understand, less likely to actually listen to you. Okay? And again, that will get aggression. And that aggression or that frustration will come from them because you can't answer their question. but it'll come from them as well, or sorry, come from you because of the way that they are with you. Okay, and that's where that situational awareness. So what do we do then when people speak to us? Remember the leaps. Okay, again, this has come up previously in units. This is definitely Unit 5. When it comes to leaps, obviously L is listen. Listen to what they show. Show empathy. That does not mean sympathy. Empathy is, okay, I understand that you can't bring that flag in. However, it clearly states that nothing is over 1.5 metres, for example. Or you cannot wear that shirt in this part of the stadium because it's you're actually in the away end. I know, anything on the home end, anything on those sort of lines. Show them, I understand it, and I would be annoyed if that happened to me too. However, these are the rules. Ask questions. If you don't know what the answer is, probing questions. So if someone tells you something, I've lost my phone. Fantastic. How big's the stadium? Who knows where you are? So what sort of questions are you going to ask there? Where did you last see it? What does it look like? Have you tried ringing it? Anything those sort of lines. Paraphrase. People will tell you a full story of what's happened. What you need to paraphrase is get the main points, important parts out of it. For example, someone's potentially lost their phone. They will tell you what time they came into the stadium and where they're sitting. Fantastic. But what do we need to know? The main important parts. Once you've done that, you'll summarise. So the idea behind summarising is quite simply, excuse me, the idea behind summarising is making sure you've got all the right points. Because they've told you a story. You now need to say, okay, let me just make sure I've got this all correct. X, Y, B, D, yes, fantastic. Is there anything else you want to add? No, fantastic. That's why you've got that information. And we spoke about before, why is it important you've got all the information? It's so you can deal with that problem. You can actually deal with it. If there's anything that's missing, it then gives them the opportunity to tell you. Okay, so we talked about communication. There obviously are blocks to communication. You could be talking to someone exactly as we've discussed, but there'll always be blocks. Now, what are blocks to communication? It's when someone is not listening to you or someone's just generally not paying attention. This can be for many factors. A lot of people will say it's because they're not interested, but there are actually legitimate blocks to it. So if someone's in pain, they're less likely to listen to you. As a tutor, hunger, and it's too hot. If somebody's hungry, we're coming up to lunchtime and somebody wants something to eat, I'll be honest with you, students are less likely to actually listen to what I'm saying because all they're thinking about is having that food. Background noise. Think about when you're trying to speak to someone and you're speaking to someone in the crowd. There's a load of noise, they just score, the PA system goes off. You're never ever going to be able to speak to someone because you always get interrupted. So what's the best thing to do? Take them away to a quiet area so you can have a conversation with them. A language barrier. A cultural barrier, emotional barrier, the attitude which you discussed. Someone that has been drinking, they're not going to listen to you, or very, very rarely will they listen to you. Or if they do listen to you, are they taking everything in? So what might you have to do? You might have to speak to them a bit slower. You might have to make sure they understand, be a bit more patient. Someone may have a mental illness. It's a possibility, and obviously psychological noise within them. But I think the main ones we're going to come across, I think it's going to probably be anyone's in pain, the loud noise, a language barrier. For the clubs that you're working at, you may end up having individuals that come from another country to come and watch their team play, or a player, and their command of English language is minimal. You may have to combat. Again, that's a block to communication. Okay, so how do we now deal with aggression? So we understand what causes someone to get angry. We understand what aggression is. We understand the blocks to communication. So how do we deal with aggression? Well, first of all, we signal non-aggression by palms. This is just the theory side of it. We will go through this on the practical training we're going to be doing. But think about your position. Think about your attitude. Look and listen to what they're saying. Make space and think about your stance. So where your position's got to be somewhere where there's enough space. You're not straight on, because remember, a sign of aggression is being square on to someone. How's your attitude got to be? Well, your attitude has got to be positive. Absolutely, there's no point being negative. It's got to be positive. Look and listen to what they're saying. Look at them. Look at their eye contact. Look at their face, their facial expressions. Make space. Why is that important? Well, that's obviously there to protect yourself as much as not getting too close to those. Again, we'll show you this on the practical side of it. Think about your stance. Think about how you're standing. The next one, active listening. So actively listen to that person. If you're telling someone something, you want to know that they are listening to you. If they're not listening to you, then you're going to get frustrated. Show empathy. Again, we've discussed that before. Understand, put yourself in their shoes. Win their trust. How do you win their trust? Well, winning their trust, for me, is very simple. Say you do what you say you're going to do. If you say to someone, you know what, I will look into that, and you do it, that's how you gain their trust. And look for a win-win. So this is what we're going to go through. But first and foremost, in order to deal with aggression, remember the 4 A's. Do not get angry yourself. Remember, that person shouting at you, not necessarily because of you, but because of the situation they find themselves in. So think about the environment. Think about the reasons why they're getting angry. Most importantly, don't get angry yourself. The last thing you can do is someone's shouting at you, you shout back at them. Manage the abuse. Again, people will look at something about you and they will just hurl abuse at you. You're this, whatever it may be. Okay? Manage it. Do not get, just think outside of it. Think, that person's said it to me because I've just told them that they can't do A, B, C. They're not doing it me as a person because it's the rules. What's the reason why I've told them that they can't bring in a flag or they can't bring in a drink? It's not a personal thing. As soon as you make something personal, that's when it changes. Maintain a positive attitude. That's important because all the time that you maintain a positive attitude, you'll actually, as we said before in that Atari's box in the attitude cycle, if you remain positive throughout it and you act positively, that person will find it very hard to remain negative. If you're negative, then obviously that cycle comes in. So what you want to try and do is remain positive at all times. I appreciate that's hard. I appreciate it that you're coming to the end of a shift, or alternatively, you've been in the stadium, there's 3,000 people coming into it, and they've said exactly the same thing. They've talked about the same problems. It is difficult, but you must be able to try and do that. Again, we'll practice it. But above all, be assertive. Do not be aggressive. Do not be passive. Be assertive. What comes with passive is the reasons why they can't do something. So, if, for example, someone cannot stand in an aisle, being aggressive is saying things like, can't stand now, why not? Because I told you, just move out of the way. That's aggressive. Passive is, sorry, can you move out of the way? And they don't, you go, all right, don't worry, you walk off. They've got you. Assertive is this. Sorry, you can't stand in the aisle because this is a health and safety risk. Failure to do so will potentially result in a season ticket ban or an ejection and your face is on camera. That's what assertiveness is. Again, we'll go through this in the practical side of it. So, in order to deal with this aggression, we've covered that aspect of it, but think of safer. Okay, this is a mnemonic that we use in the DOOR course, in the conflict management course. So the first one is take a step back. So that literally, do not go running in. What will happen if you go running in? Well, it's very, very simple. If you go running in, you'll end up getting into potentially into a situation. Assess the threat. Okay, find help, evaluate options, and respond. But when it comes to we're going to assess the threat. So how do you do that? Remember POP: people, objects, and places. So what are you looking for? You're looking for people. History of previous aggression. Known criminals. Is there a number of them? Mental health issues. The biggest one with aggression, or have you spoken to them before? Have you told this guy 4 or 5 times to sit down? Not necessarily that game, but I'm talking about 20 over the course of the season. You know that person is going to potentially be a handful because you've dealt with him previously. Okay, that's where you need to do that dynamic risk assessment. Think about objects, bottles. I don't know, it could be anything. People might have. You're going into a situation where someone's managed to take or get a bottle or a glass container into that seating area and/or into the venue itself. Okay. The issue you're going to have with that: are you going to approach that person in such a way that you're not thinking about that glass bottle, or you're not thinking about that pole, or you're not thinking about that umbrella with the spike on it? Think about it. If you're going to approach someone and someone's got one of them golfing umbrellas with the big spike on it, are you going to go up to that person with enough distance so you could get poked in the eye? The answer's no. So think about that sort of side of it. Think about what they're carrying, or even what people around them are carrying. Okay. Next thing is obviously the place. Think about where the incident's happening, the concourse. What's on the concourse? Well, first of all, there's cameras and other people to help you. But what is there? There's other people there. You start throwing people around or dealing with a situation, more people are going to come there. So think of the concourse. If it's on a staircase, that's very, very dangerous. You try and deal with an issue on a staircase, you do have potential problems. Secluded area, what is there that potentially will cause you issues? The first one is potentially no CCTV cameras. Secondly, most importantly, is the fact that you can't get out. They've blocked your exit. If it's a wet floor, broken glass, no CCTV or a blocked exit. So think about the place of where you are. Okay. So again, they go to find help. Who can you use? Well, you have an emergency phone. If you have a radio, call for it. Do not go in on your own. Evaluate your options. Decide what the best thing is to do. Okay. 9 times out of 10, as a steward, you will not have that autonomy to make that decision. The reason why I say that is because if that person needs to be ejected, that will come from the safety officer, that will come from the control room. However, you still need to evaluate your options. If you've got to go and tell someone to sit down, or you tell someone they can't do something, and there's 4, 5, 6 people, do you go in on your own? Absolutely not. You go and tell someone, tell your supervisor, and then you respond accordingly. So whatever you want to do, that's what you do. If you go and speak to your supervisor, speak to your supervisor, okay? So make sure that you respond, and it's 100%. Showing empathy. So we talked about this. This is another way of how to deal with it. We've covered, obviously, the practical aspect of it in pop and safer. Now we've got empathy. Put yourself in their shoes. Acknowledge their feelings. Seeing things from their point of view. So that person there has travelled down from wherever it may be, or travelled up, depending on the location. He's travelled there and he has a drink that he wants to bring in because he's bought it, and you tell him he can't. Show empathy. I appreciate that. I appreciate this. However, the rules state that you can and you can't do this. Okay. Acknowledge their feelings. Put yourself in their shoes. I personally have never lost a mobile phone. However, if someone says to me, I think I've lost my phone, I know that on there I'm going to have pictures of my children. I'm going to have all my contacts, all my emails. So put yourself in their shoes. I can imagine what that person's going to feel like, because if that was me, I would feel exactly the same. That's what empathy is. Then obviously you've got spacings, okay? Why is it important that we create spacings? It's to protect yourself and obviously that person as well. Again, we will cover this in the practical scenario. However, what you have got there is intimate space, 0 to 0.5 metres. That's who is allowed into your intimate space, anyone you allow. Safe and normal space, okay, it's 0.5 to 1.2 metres. These dimensions or these spacings are what people believe it to be, but everybody's different. Then you've got the stranger space. So creating that space, I believe anybody who is in your intimate space is allowed to be there. Anyone in a safe, normal space, everyone's happy. In stranger space is everybody else. This isn't just for you, this is for other people as well. Again, we will cover this on the practical side of it, but this is just the theory aspect behind it. So, what is a win-win? Well, a win-win is when both parties are satisfied with the result. For example, you tell someone they cannot bring alcohol past or into the stand or into the bowl. Okay, what's your win? That they don't bring it in. What's their win? Well, their win is the fact they get to keep their drink, but they then get to watch the game. So, look at it this way. I know some stadiums do this. Some stadiums will have a TV on the concourse. So, my win-win would be, sorry sir, you can't bring your alcohol in there. However, you're more than welcome to stand over there and watch it on the TV. As soon as you're finished, you may come up past me. That's a win-win. That person there, he or she, has not been ridiculed. That is not a trigger. They haven't been humiliated. They haven't been spoken to in a bad way. My win is that they don't try and sneak alcohol past me. Okay. So what is it? It's a minimal aggression and stress. It's doing a professional job, finding a successful solution. That's why I'm looking at the TV. Okay. The other alternative is if there's no TVs, you can say, right, I'm going to give you 5 seconds. You've got to down it as a bit of a sort of comical value. Again, you've got to gauge it. But I'm just looking at different sort of scenarios and situations, and leaving the other person satisfied that you've done your best. You've got that lost phone. Are you going to find a phone in amongst 3,500 people? Chances are no. However, what do they want you to do? What would you want that person to do? And the simple answer is take the complaint seriously and go and have a look. Go and find it. Okay. So all about saving face, being listened to and taken seriously, and receiving a helpful explanation of why you can't do something. Okay. Never make it personal. So you also have something known as an exit strategy. We'll cover this more in detail in the practical scenario. However, what it comes down to is teamwork, okay, and obviously contact and cover. There is another slide, another package that we have for this. I'm not going to go through this now, but we will go through this on the practical side, on the practical day that we do, and I'll show it a little bit more. And I would want to see this when you're obviously dealing with these situations, okay? So, in summary, how do you manage conflict? Be proactive, be assertive, signal non-aggression, because if you're aggressive, they get aggressive. Choose positive behaviour. Watch for signs of escalation. Watch for that staring. Watch for that red face. Watch for that clenched fist. Show empathy. Put yourself in their shoes. Active listening. Actually listen to what the person's saying. The worst thing that can happen is that you're talking to someone and they're not listening to you. Look for a win-win, so both parties are happy. That person's happy, I'm happy. Everyone's a winner. And build a rapport. That is the first thing you can do. Find something about them that you can actually build a rapport. It could be the fact that they come from the same place as you, or you've seen them previously before. Anything like that. Building a rapport, that automatically brings that person down. Okay. So that's a summary of conflict management. So there's one other thing we obviously do need to discuss, and that's when it comes to the portfolio, is the incident report writing. Okay. So I'm just going to flick to the Word document. So here we go, incident report. So why is it important for a steward to complete an incident report or a witness statement of a serious conflict situation? Well, the simple answer is because there potentially may be an investigation, okay? So if something's happened, you've got to put your side of it down. And this could be something that you've observed. Alternatively, it could be something that you've been involved in. It gets your opportunity to put your down on paper. This is the most important thing. And I'll say this from a supervisor's perspective, and also as well, I'm an ex-Royal Military policeman. For me, this is very important. It needs to be written down. Okay. So, what details should be included? Well, this is obviously very self-explanatory. The answer to this really comes down to you can only put in there what you saw. What you can't put in there is your opinions. This happened because I believe this. That is not important. That is what's known as hearsay. You need to put in there the facts, okay? And how do you write an incident report? Who, what, when, where, and why. So who was involved? You describe them. When we do the practical side of it, there'll be an incident, and I'll show you how you're going to describe somebody. What's happened? You can only put down now what you saw or what you heard. You cannot put down what someone told you, known as hearsay. When did it happen? Well, when did it happen? That's the timing, the date, okay? Where did it happen? This is important of where it happened, because there may be CCTV cameras that can actually see it, or there may be other people, okay? And why did it happen? Well, unless you know the reason why it happened, you can't put that down. So if you see a fire that happens, or happens on the concourse, or wherever it may be, why did that happen? Well, unless you actually know, you can't write that down. The answer is, if you don't know, is I do not know why it happened, but this is what's happened. Okay, so that why, unless you was involved in it, then obviously you can't mention it. Okay. Now, last but no means least, for this unit, we have here again another scenario-based question, which obviously we're going to be looking at. Remember, on the first unit 1, when this comes up, you have to answer this based upon what that scenario is all about. Okay. So again, you need to read this. Read this narrative, and then answer the questions based on the knowledge, and also as well relevant to that. So, for example, what potential risk do you consider existing to yourself and others in this situation? Well, in this situation, a little bit of a fracas, if you like, happens in the queue. So think POP. So what's POP? People, objects, places. So how many people are there? What are the objects they've got? What you've got to remember for this one is that they are actually outside the venue, so they would not have been searched. So you don't even know what's on them. You don't know if they have an illegal weapon or a prohibited item on them, because they have not gone through that search process, okay? And obviously the place, they're in the rain. So how would you maintain your personal safety in this situation? Well, again, you would do this by using safer. So this is where it all comes in, okay? This is what we've taught, this is what we've learned. So you answer that question now with regards to the scenario, to the narrative on that, and everything that we've gone through. Okay, so a bit of a recap, obviously, on the incident report. There's one more slide I want to show you, and that is incident report. So incidents happened. what's happened, why did it happen, and what can I learn from next time. So one of the questions that comes up is, what is the importance of an incident report? Well, it becomes a legal document. Once you've signed it, it becomes a legal document. But it also puts the facts down. Because something may happen, you then may have to go to court or remember it 6 months later. In that case, you wouldn't remember it, because not everyone can remember what happened 6 months ago, especially if you're working every week and an incident happens every week. Okay, so the importance of it is to get the information down, getting the facts. That then goes to the safety officer via your supervisor, and potentially to the police. Okay, so what sort of things are you going to be looking at? A pocketbook. It's always important to have a pocketbook. You should have one anyway, as we discussed before in the briefings, because obviously it's important you write the information down, but it's also used to write descriptions of people. An incident book. Obviously do that from the information in your pocketbook. First aid books you've got RIDDOR. What RIDDOR is a reporting chain for first aid. This I'll explain this a little bit more in Unit 6, and obviously a police statement. Okay, so that's the importance of a incident report for the conflict management side. Okay, so last but not least, obviously always the last slide is, if you have any issues, contact myself or Kelly on gnrtrainingltd@gmail.com. We'll send it over. Again, you can ask these questions on the webinar, and we look forward to seeing you on the practical days. Many thanks. Bye.